You're listening to the micro version of the Savage Lovecast, www.savagelovecast.com.
If you're stuck in a relationship quandary, or if you're looking for sexual harmony, well, there's nothing you can't ask on the Savage Lovecast.
Christians for Trump, which is a thing, has a Facebook page. And this weekend, they posted something to their Facebook page that Josh Marshall at Talking Points Memo took a picture of and tweeted out. I follow Josh on Twitter, and you should too. I don't follow Christians for Trump on Facebook, and you shouldn't either. But it's a picture of, I believe, Miley Cyrus, and also a picture of Rosie O'Donnell and Katy Perry and Beyonce and someone in the upper left-hand corner. I'm not quite sure who she is, but maybe it's Courtney Love. And they're all grabbing their own crotches. They're all grabbing their pussies. And the caption from Christians for Donald Trump is, "Christians, sorry for the visual, but we must show the hypocrisy. These are the same ones that are offended and support Hillary." Offended, of course, by Donald Trump's comments on the bus with Billy Beane about, because he's famous and rich and so very attractive, that he can do whatever he wants to women, including grab them by the pussy. And this is supposedly showing the hypocrisy, because look at all of these women, many of them beloved by the left. Hillary Clinton supporter Katy Perry, Donald Trump antagonist Rosie O'Donnell, Miley Cyrus, not sure who she's supporting. But look at all of these liberal left Dem women. And what are they doing? They're grabbing pussy, just like Donald Trump. And what they don't quite grok, as the kids are going to stop saying once they hear me saying it, what they don't quite grok is that these are women grabbing their own pussies. That we can infer consent here when someone grabs their own pussy. When someone masturbates, when a guy gives himself a hand job, that doesn't require affirmative consent at that moment. That doesn't require yes to be said out loud, because he's grabbing his own dick, not somebody else's dick. These women are grabbing their own pussies. It is consensual. They are touching their own bodies. Their right to touch their own bodies does not somehow transmorgify into a right for creepy, orange, sexist, shitty, racist, xenophobic billionaires to grab them by the pussy if he feels so motivated. A woman's right to control her own body, to decide for herself whether she's going to have a baby and who gets to touch her, a concept that eludes many on the right. Also consent, a concept that eludes many on the right, as evidenced last week by Rush Limbaugh, who had this to say.
You know what the magic word, the only thing that matters in American sexual mores today is one thing. You can do anything. The left will promote and understand and tolerate anything as long as there is one element. Do you know what it is? Consent. If there is consent on both or all three or all four, however many are involved in the sex act, it's perfectly fine, whatever it is. But if the left ever senses and smells that there's no consent in part of the equation, then here come the rape police. But consent is the magic key to the left.
So what Rush is saying here is that the left thinks that emphasizing the importance of obtaining someone's consent to touch them sexually is evidence of steep moral decline, whereas those of us on the left who emphasize the importance of obtaining consent think that obtaining consent is evidence that you are not fucking raping someone. So basically, this old drug and rage addict who leads and speaks for so many in the Republican base, a man whose life's work has culminated in a very real threat to our republic. He wants to return us to a time when consensual sex between gay perverts was a crime and straight men could legally rape their wives, aka the good old days. And it wasn't that long ago. Marital rape, just one of the many forms of rape that Donald Trump is alleged to know something about, didn't become a crime in all 50 states until 1993, and the last state sodomy bans weren't overturned until 2003. But it's not just marital rape that this fissured old asshole Rush Limbaugh is supporting here. When Rush complains about the rape police, aka the police, showing up if there's no consent in part of the equation, we all know exactly which part of the equation he's referring to. The lady part of the equation. If the woman hasn't consented to being kissed, to having her pussy grabbed, to being penetrated, that's somehow a huge problem for Rush nowadays. Oh, thanks, Obama. Even if the other half of the equation, that would be the kisser, the groper, the GOP nominee, happens to be straight and male and maybe orange. Rush believes man-on-woman sex should be perceived as virtuous, even in the absence of consent, which makes it not sex, makes it rape. But even in the absence of consent, he believes it is virtuous because, hey, whatever else you might say about that kind of sex, it's dehumanizing, it's traumatizing, it's rape. At least there's nothing gay about it. Genitals, they're the magic ingredient for Rush Limbaugh. Genitals, not consent, is what matters most to Rush. And if you're working with one of each, one cock, one pussy, it's perfectly fine, says Rush, even if the person with the vagina hasn't consented. Which brings us back to Christians for Donald Trump. I don't know if Jesus Christ himself is on Facebook, but I hope he is. I hope he sees their page. I hope someday he can stop throwing up. All right, speaking of consent, coming up today on the regular show, tons of your questions. And coming up on the Magnum, which you can subscribe to at www.savagelovecast.com, a discussion about a very tricky issue when it comes to consent, sexual advance directives. It's an interesting convo with a law professor on the Magnum on today's show. All coming up. This episode of the Lovecast is brought to you by Stamps.com. Buy and print official U.S. postage using your own computer and your own printer. For a special offer, which includes a digital scale and up to $55 worth of free postage, go to Stamps.com and enter SAVAGE.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the easiest way to create a beautiful website, blog, or online store for you and your ideas. Squarespace features an elegant interface, beautiful templates, and incredible 24/7 customer support. Try Squarespace at squarespace.com and enter offer code SAVAGE at checkout to get 10% off. That's squarespace.com. Offer code SAVAGE.
Today's Savage Lovecast is brought to you by Me Undies. High quality, super comfortable, good looking undies. Get 20% off your first order when you go to meundies.com/savage.
Dan, this is the escort/hooker who called in. So I just had a client leave, and, I get a lot of Republicans because they have some disposable income, those guys, but this guy quoted the recent Donald Trump video saying, grab you by the pussy 3 different times. And I was horrified. I didn't know what to say. And it sort of speaks to a bigger question that my lovely, amazing, understanding boyfriend has been mentioning to me lately, which is that I should use this position as a highly paid, highly coveted escort as sort of a educational position, if you will, to perhaps instruct people how, to not make their wives so miserable that they won't have sex with them in some cases. In other cases, I'm sure their wives have other perfectly legitimate reasons. But how do you do that and still maintain your bottom line? I'm just a little befuddled. I'm also a little bit shy. I'm a little bit of a sub, and in this case, I should have been like, his hand was in my cunt, and he said, what did Trump say? Grab him by the pussy? And I was so horrified, but I didn't say anything. What should I have said? And what do I say when men are treating my clitoris like, a tiny penis and just like sucking on it until I feel like all my nerve endings are going to die? What's the best way of educating men without like throwing them off of my brand, so to speak?
Leave them in better condition than you found them. That's the campsite rule that I originally came up with to talk about relationships with large age differences. That, if you're in your 40s and you're dating someone who's 19 or 22, and I don't think those are always exploitative relationships. Those can be very good relationships. Usually, though, not relationships that are destined to go the distance, which is not the only metric for assessing whether a relationship was good or successful. You should make an effort, a good faith effort, to leave them in better condition than you found them. No unplanned pregnancies, no lies about the likelihood of going the distance, no sexually transmitted infections, no unnecessary heartbreak or emotional trauma, and hopefully some better skills and maybe some better interpersonal relationship skills and some slightly higher emotional IQ by dint of the benefit of your worldliness and experience. And people pointed out after I came up with the campsite rule that should apply to all our relationships, even if there's no age imbalance, that we should all endeavor to leave each other in better condition than we found each other. Even if it's not a sexual or an intimate or romantic relationship, we should try to leave the barista this morning in better condition than we found the barista this morning. But in your role, your professional capacity as a service provider, you're in a strange position where, in a typical leave them in better condition than you found them relationship, you might have to be assertive, you might have to be prescriptive, you might have to talk sense to somebody, you might have to fuck sense into somebody, you might have to pull them up short and explain things to them. You're an older gay man and you're in your, late 30s and you're dating some 22-year-old and you learned a decade ago what was wrong with putting no fats, no femmes, no Asians, just my preferences on a personal ad because that's hurtful and it's unnecessary and it's shitty and it's racist. It's all these other things and you learned that and you know better now and you're with somebody who's 22 and that's on his profile. You might want to say something. It's your job to leave them in better condition than you found them, to scold that person. But you can't really scold someone when you're the escort. You're there to play a part. You're there to play an erotic role. It's a little drama. For one, you've been hired to perform, to play a character, to make this person feel like what they're doing is sexy. That doesn't mean that you should have to put up with physical discomfort. If they're sucking your clit for such a long time that it's physically uncomfortable or painful, redirect their energies and be assertive in that moment. Like, that's no longer feeling so hot. Let's move over here. Make me feel good by going over to this erogenous zone for a little while with your sucking skills. But I'm not sure that you can be prescriptive in the same way in this commodified relationship that you would be prescriptive in a romantic relationship. That he's saying these shitty things, that he's invoking Donald Trump while he has his hand in your cunt, just quoting you. That would be a turnoff to me. If I were in your position and that were my pussy we were talking about, that would be the Sahara of pussies the first time he said it. By the third time he said it, it would be sucking the moisture out of his arm. He would be rapidly dehydrating. His arm attached to that hand would look like beef jerky by the third time he said it. Because at that point, my pussy wouldn't just be dry. It would be not a dehumidifier. What do you call it? When you put meat in it to turn it into beef jerky? It dehydrates shit. It would be a dehydrator, a commercial industrial strength dehydrator that can reduce a cow to a pile of beef jerky in 5 seconds. That would be what my pussy would be the third time I heard, like, Donald Trump grab my pussy. But if that's what this creepy fucking Republican shitbag is turned on by right now, thanks Donald, and that's the kind of dirty talk that he wants to engage in, he's paying you to roll with it. It's your job to roll with it. It's awful. If that were my pussy and that happened to me, I would probably, if I was in your position, if I was a service provider providing this erotic service, this erotic role play service, I would need to vent after that. I would need to shower after that. I would need to get somebody's hands into my pussy that I liked, who would say the right things, who would say things that would turn me on, not just turn himself on. But I don't think I'd speak up. It's not my job at that moment to educate that person. It's my job to perform for that person, to do for that person. That's what they're paying me for. That said, all that said, I know a lot of sex workers. We've had a lot of sex workers on the show. I have friends who are sex workers. What I often hear from them is that half the job, sometimes more than half, is conversing with guys who don't have a lot of social skills or don't know how to converse with women or aren't usually in situations where the woman is kind of their equal, where the woman can take them or leave them. Yes, he's paying you, but you are free to go. You can terminate that relationship. So you can make demands about how you're treated, the ways in which he speaks to you. Escorts are allowed to have limits, and you could assert as a limit the shit that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth pulls me out of the moment. It makes it impossible for me to provide you with this service that you are paying me a lot of money to provide you with. So err on the side of non-Trumpian dirty talk if you want to continue to have access to my much in-demand pussy. You can be assertive in that way, but I don't think it's your responsibility to educate someone in this circumstance. It's not your responsibility to leave this person in better condition than you found him. Hopefully, by interacting with you, he will leave in better condition than you found him. But that's not your job at that moment. And finally, a lot of people look at your position in this and see you as having none of the power and him having all of the power because he's paying you and you need that money. And there you are selling access to your body at that moment. You have power still in that moment. You can accept or reject the gig. You can accept or reject the client. You describe yourself as much in demand. You can cut off clients. You can send them packing. You can say to him, oh, you're voting for that rapist, sexually assaulting, shitbag, xenophobic, sexist, transphobic, homophobic, gay marriage opposing pile of garbage? Well, I have lots of other clients who aren't going to vote for someone or quote someone who is the enemy of myself and everyone that I love and respect, all women everywhere. You can send him packing if you so choose. Maybe that'll make him into a better person. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, contra your boyfriend, you don't have a responsibility to educate this dude in the moment. You have an opportunity, which is different than a responsibility. You have an opportunity to educate that dude in that moment. And you can make a choice about whether or not you're going to do that based on your own considerations, your own needs. What's right for you in that moment. It would feel better to send him packing? Send him packing. If you can smile and let the shitty Republican Donald Trump quoting pussy grabber say whatever he needs to say so he comes quicker and gets out, you can do that too. That's the difference between having a responsibility and having an opportunity.
Hi, Dan. I am a 26-year-old straight gal in Canada. So I'm in a newish relationship with a really sweet, lovely guy. We just moved in together and we go on awesome adventures, mountain bike. We're about to go on a big road trip and it's rad. So he has a bit of a low confidence issue. He's had some really crummy girlfriends and I think he has a hard time believing I want him. So we're dealing with that. And I think that's going pretty well. So here's the but. Every now and then he gets really inappropriately grabby, not in a rapey kind of way, more in a little kid who wants something and just kind of tries to take it. He'll just reach across and full on cup my downstairs, or he'll start playing with my breast pretty randomly. And, I kind of obviously let him know I don't like it. And then he kind of tries to force it a little bit. My reaction is pretty black and white, solid. I, say, hey, I don't like this, don't do this, and I get my back really up. And then it sends him into the, I can't do anything right, you don't even want to touch me kind of thing. And he'll almost get, he'll get really sad and mopey, and, yeah, so I'm kind of confused as to how to deal with it. I don't know how to set the lines. He's really confused. How can I initiate sex? He should be able to come up to me, his partner, and kiss me. But do you have any thoughts on something or ways that I can maybe steer him a little bit more gently? Because I get quite aggressive back and, I don't like this, don't do this. And, yeah, it doesn't seem to be sending him in the right direction.
I feel a little conflicted about answering this question because I will sometimes come up upon Terry, behind Terry, and I will grab his butt, not squeeze grab, but place my hands upon his chest. And if he's welcoming of that sort of interaction at that moment, he allows it to continue. And if he's not, he says, not now. And he kind of shrugs me off and I withdraw my hands and I go away. And I don't feel bad about it. And he doesn't feel bad about the attempt. And I don't feel bad about the deflection because we're mature and grown up and we've been together a long time. You guys sound mature. You sound very grown up. You haven't been together long yet. So you haven't established a rapport, a routine. You haven't figured out how this works in your relationship and how you both fit together. And the real problem here is it sounds like when you say not now, or you try to shrug it off and you communicate to him that this isn't welcome at this time, he gets sad and mopey, or he keeps going, which is even worse because you've clearly withdrawn your consent, and he presses it, and that ain't okay. And then that makes you blow up, which you have an absolute right to do at that moment. And he should be sad and mopey and full of regret and introspection if he kept going and you had to blow up at him to get him to fucking stop. That is a huge problem. But you like him and you want this to work, and mountain biking, and you want to fix him. You don't want to dump him. And so what you need to do is get some words in between his impulse and his action, and not your words. He has the impulse to touch you, and he needs to say something at that moment. That's what you need to say to him. You have this impulse to touch me. Sometimes your touch is welcome. Sometimes your touch is unwelcome. And right now you can't tell the difference. You're not able to make that call yourself. You can't read me well enough to be batting even 500 on this. And you should be aiming to bat 900 on this. And you can't read me well enough to know when your touch might be welcome and when your touch would be unwelcome. So here's what we're going to do. You need to say something in between the impulse to touch me and the action of touching me that gives me the opportunity to say now. All he has to say is he wants to touch you. All he has to say is now, and gesture, move toward you a little bit without any contact. And at that moment, you can say, yeah, now. Or you can say, not now. And maybe in time, with enough of those words, and they're not many words, one or two, inserted between his impulse and his action, he will then get a better sense of the moments when it'll work, the moments when you will be welcoming of his touch. Because right now he can't tell the difference. So if he sees the difference over and over again, because you get him to put those words, that request in between the impulse and the action, maybe he will get better at assessing, better at reading you. His batting average or groping average will increase to where he's at 900, where 9 times out of 10, when he does touch you, it's a moment where it's welcome. He's saying now, and you're saying, yeah, now, 90% of the time, and then he can maybe stop asking at that point. Because you having to shrug him off 1 time out of 10, which I think is roughly how often Terry has to shrug me off, won't aggravate you so much. Right now, with you having to shrug him off 9 times out of 10, that's extremely aggravating, particularly with the he continues after you've attempted to shrug him off, and he needs to knock that shit off. You need to blow up at him strategically, repeatedly, incessantly about that until that fucking stops. And don't you feel, as the woman in the relationship, don't you feel at that moment when you blow up at him when he does that shitty thing and presses it, that then you have to comfort him? No. You have to let him sit with his shitty feelings because he should feel shitty at that moment for what he did. It's not your job to rush in and comfort him at that moment because he should feel bad. Let him feel bad and let him come back to you and apologize. Don't you run to him and apologize for making him feel bad about the bad thing he did that he should feel bad for having done. But the retrain is right there in between his impulse and his action. Tell him you welcome the impulse. The problem is the action isn't always welcome. You want to be desired by him and you desire him in turn, but he's not reading you. And you're going to help him get better at reading you so he fails less, so that when he does initiate, he's likelier to get the answer that he wants because he's no longer initiating when he's unlikely to get the answer that he wants and also the answer that you want. You want him initiating when you want him to initiate.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. They make it simple and intuitive to create your website, blog, or online store. You can add and arrange your content and features with the click of a mouse, and they make adding a domain to your site simple. If you sign up for a year, you'll receive a custom domain for free. And if you plan to create a website for your business, Squarespace has all the tools you need to get it up and running quickly. Start your free trial today at squarespace.com and enter offer code SAVAGE to get 10% off your first purchase.
Hi, Dan. I'm a 36-year-old bi-female in a spectacular monogamous relationship of 2 years, having the best sex of my life. My reason for calling is that I'm too chicken shit to share my secret kink with my amazing boyfriend, just because I'm so worried it will freak him out. I've tried to broach the topic on numerous occasions, but then I back out, and now the curiosity of what it could be is driving him mad. I was hoping that you would air my call so that I can send him the link to listen, and then he can know my kink without the awkwardness of me actually having to say it to him. I am really turned on by adult baby porn. I fantasize all the time about treating him like a baby, changing his diaper, no real pee or poop though, just pretend, and then degrading and punishing him for having wet it, and then comforting him by nursing him and stroking and sucking his cock until he orgasms, and then punishing him a bit more for that too. I am also into daddy-daughter type play, which he engages in with me. It was never something that we discussed. I just kind of started calling him daddy and acting girlish when he would spank me and dominate me, and he just went with it. So I assume that he likes it, since it's been our main dynamic for most of our sex life. I think that's part of why I'm afraid this won't appeal to him, because it's literally the opposite of what we are doing now. Also, diaper play isn't something that I can just casually drop in while we are fucking the way that I did with my daddy-daughter fetish. He is very open and GGG sexually. He lets me peg him and all sorts of other kinky shit, but I am just so petrified of freaking him out with this baby thing. Sometimes I just try to reverse our usual role play and treat him like I'm doing the molesting, and he plays along for a bit, but then he falls back into dominating me within minutes. I'm not sure if this is because he doesn't like the roles reversed, or if he just feels awkward and isn't used to it, and isn't sure how to behave as the sub in this scenario. I once made a joke about him calling me mommy, and his response was something along the lines of never, but I don't know if he was serious or joking back. So I'm nervous if I tell him that he will be totally grossed out, or even worse, I'm worried he will go along with it to please me but won't enjoy it at all. This is not anything that I need to get off, so I'm totally fine if he isn't game for it, but I would just really like to explore it if it sounds interesting to him. So baby, if you're listening and this sounds like fun, then bring home some adult diapers and baby wipes and let's give it a go. If it freaks you the fuck out, then just pretend that you never heard this call and spare me the humiliation. Okay, thanks. Love you, bye.
Not sure you need my help? There's your call. Hopefully he heard it. Hopefully he's rushing out to the store to pick up some adult diapers and baby wipes. Although I feel that since this is your kink, it's really on you to go pick up the adult diapers and the baby wipes. That should be your job if he is receptive. I do want to say quickly two things, though, that most diaper fetishists are men, and it is who want to be diapered. And, there's always 100 male paraphiliacs, whatever the paraphilia you're talking about is, for every one female paraphiliac. Always 100 male kinksters with that kink for every one female kinkster with that kink. So a woman who's into diaper play is hugely, bigly, as Donald Trump might say, in demand in the ADBL, adult diaper baby lover, whatever that is, community. So if this doesn't work out with him, you have options. Not that you have to leave him to explore those. If he's GGG and he is not into this, perhaps he might be open to you finding a dude out there who is into diapers, who you could diaper, that you could be with him without having to go without this experience all your life. But your central worry, the thing you say you're worried about most, is that he will go along with this to please you, but won't enjoy it himself at all. That's part of GGG, good giving and game, that you will do something for your partner because it pleases your partner. They take pleasure in it. And it's not that you don't enjoy it at all. You enjoy their pleasure. You take pleasure in the pleasure you're providing that person. Now, not enjoy it at all can also mean icked out by it, squicked out by it, even traumatized by it, triggered by it. If that's true, if this kink for him is not just neutral or a pleasure he can take in your pleasure, but icky, squicky, traumatizing, throws him out, a libido killer, then he shouldn't do it. And GGG does not require of us that sort of activity. Stuff that squicks us out, icks us out, triggers us, traumatizes us, is a libido killer for us. No, you don't have to do that. You don't have to go there. You can be good, giving, and game and have limits. But kinksters who have partners who are willing to go there, who are capable of taking pleasure in the pleasure that they're providing you, even if this thing that you're doing isn't something that they would want to do themselves independently or want to do with anyone else, you need to take that yes for the answer that it is. So if he's willing to do it for you, if he's willing to go along with this to please you, and that pleases him, let him. Underwear. It's the first thing you put on in the morning and the last thing you take off at night, or if you're lucky, it's the last thing your partner takes off for you at night. And why would you want to settle for anything less than the best feeling underwear on the planet? MeUndies focuses exclusively on producing the most comfortable underwear you've ever experienced. My friends at MeUndies sent me a few pairs a while back, and now I can't imagine wearing anything else, and I've ordered myself a few more pairs on my own dime. For the price of 2 cocktails, MeUndies will deliver your new favorite pair of underwear right to your doorstep. Try them on, and if they aren't the most comfortable, best-feeling underpants you have ever had, they will refund you and let you keep that first pair for free. MeUndies are made with modal, a special fabric that is 3 times softer than cotton. These uber cozy undies are sold exclusively on the MeUndies website, where you'll enjoy free shipping in the US and Canada. And for a limited time, everyone in my audience gets 20% off their first order, but you have to go to our special URL, meundies.com/savage. With the MeUndies Better Day Guarantee, you have nothing to lose, so don't wait any longer. You are listening to a sex podcast. Sex is important to you. And underwear, they are important to sex. People are often sexier in their underwear with something on than they are out of their underwear. You know it's true, and you want to wear underwear that makes you feel sexy, and MeUndies can do that. Go to MeUndies.com/savage right now for 20% off your first order. That's MeUndies.com/savage.
Hi, Dan. I'm a 27-year-old bisexual femme living on the East Coast. I recently had a rocky relationship with someone who was a younger and less experienced butch coming into their gender identity. About halfway through the relationship, they supported me in making the decision to become a stripper at a local club. They even accompanied me when I went to check out the club where I now work. Several months later, we broke up because we both knew the relationship wasn't meeting our needs. This breakup was hard on them because I was their first love. After a few weeks of not speaking to each other, we met up to talk about what went wrong in our relationship and our process of moving forward since the breakup. During the conversation, they were eager to criticize all the ways I had done them wrong in the relationship. As we were parting ways, they casually lifted their shirt and said, "Oh, by the way, if I show you something, do you promise not to hate me?" They proceeded to lift their shirt and reveal the tattoo of a butt in a thong with a $sign on the upper right ass cheek. After seeing me turn visually upset, they told me the tattoo was a part of their process in getting over the relationship. I see this as an attempt to degrade me, my body, and my work. I would normally cut someone like this out of my life, but the queer community in my city is relatively small. This person is interested in being accountable and was open to the idea of getting the tattoo covered up. My question is, do you think that it could be possible to trust this person again? Or do you think someone who gets a tattoo of your ass as a merit badge gets no mercy?
Okay, first of all, you are not obligated to get together after a relationship ends to process and parse out and hash out and thinly slice every fucking thing that went wrong. You are obligated when a relationship ends to stay the fuck away from each other for a while so that the wounds close. But it seems to be common in some chunks of queer community land for people to meet up and hash out and process and pick at scabs that have yet to form. And for what reason? Well, I guess to stay engaged, to stay involved, to keep those fish hooks in each other. And so the tattoo is just a piece of that, and a very effective piece of that. The tattoo that she got to piss you off, it fucking worked. You allowed yourself to be trolled with a tattoo. The thing you should have done when they opened their shirt and showed you their asshole tattoo, which was designed to bait you, was not play the part that they were demanding you play at that moment, not be baited, not perform anger for them at their request. Even if you had to fake it, even if you had to stifle it, your move then was to pretend that you were not angry about this because you do not care what they do with their body because you're not in a fucking relationship anymore. And they don't answer to you anymore. So fuck this accountability crap. They're not accountable to you. You are not accountable to each other anymore. You are not involved anymore. Just because you're locked in the little hot box of a tiny queer community, it doesn't mean you have to talk to each other, meet up with each other, inspect each other's bodies for asshole tattoos that may or may not crop up or get covered up in an accountability moment. Fuck that. They're your ex. Don't have coffee with them to talk about your fucking feelings. Don't have coffee with them and give them the opportunity to give you brand new feelings that then you will have to process and talk about, have accountability moments about, that will give her an opportunity to get another fucking tattoo about it. No. Don't see them anymore. It's over. This war is over if you want it to be over. Just don't show up on the battlefield of bullshit, processing, emotion, accountability moments, horseshit, extending the life of the emotional entanglement that you got out of this relationship to end. Forgive me for this. Stop being such a cliche. As someone said on the Lovecast, a caller once long ago, not my monkeys, not my circus. Not your butch romantic partner, not your chest, not your tattoo, not your monkeys, not your fucking circus. Have some, what's the word? Have some boundaries. You had some process, you had some accountability horse shit moment. Now have some fucking boundaries. It's over, it's done. They're out of your life. Get the fuck out of their shirt. Trips to the post office have probably become second nature to you. They seem easy because you've been doing your mailing and shipping that way for so long. But think about all the hassle. Dropping what you're doing, driving there, finding parking, waiting. There's a much better way. Stamps.com. Stamps.com is the easy and convenient way to get postage right from your desk. Buy and print official U.S. postage using your own computer and your own printer. With Stamps.com, there's no guesswork. They make it easy to get exact postage for any letter, any package, any class of mail the instant you need it. No expensive postage meters to lease and no more trips to the post office. Don't wait. Go to Stamps.com, and before you do anything else, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage and type in Savage. That's Stamps.com and enter Savage.
Hi, Dan. I'm a 25-year-old straight male, and I have a question about emotions, or rather, lack of emotions when it comes to dating. Before graduating college, I did not date a lot at all, but since graduation, I must have gone on dates with at least 50 to 100 different women who I've met through a combination of online dating sites, organized events in my area, and mutual friends. There are 4 women who I've dated for at least a few months, most of which I still have a cordial or friendly connection with. The issue that I cannot seem to figure out is that even though in most of these relationships I shared great times with these women, laughed a lot, and had some great sex, I've never once been devastated or upset for more than a day or two over a breakup. Everybody in my life who seems to have clicked well with their partner in a past relationship appears to me to at least be a little more upset than I have been when their breakup occurs. For my breakups, I have been both on the initiating and the receiving side. My friends tell me that the reason I have never been upset over a breakup is that I have never truly fallen in love with anybody, or that I did not care about the woman enough to be devastated over her. This reasoning seems wrong to me, though, because I am convinced that I do know what love feels like, and I've had feelings for these women both emotionally and physically that make me feel infinitely happier and a better person for being around them. So my question is this: is it possible that I've never been upset over a breakup, but at the same time truly loved some of these women? Am I an underreacting sociopathic freak for remaining stoic through these breakups that should stress me out and upset me at least a little? And lastly, are there others like me because I don't know anyone in my life who has the same situation? But knowing that there are others out there who can go through breakups almost without emotion would somehow make me feel more secure. Please help.
You can go see a shrink, and there are tests that they can administer to determine whether you're a sociopath or not. So there's a way to rule that out, and it doesn't include calling some faggot with a sex advice podcast to make a determination or a ruling, because I'm not in any position to make that determination or ruling. What I will say is, it doesn't sound like you're unhappy. People are looking at you and saying, why aren't you miserable? You should be miserable. We would be miserable if we were going through what you had just gone through. But you're not obligated to feel worse than you actually feel. Maybe the case is that you are a sociopath and you have a harder time forming interpersonal human connections. It doesn't mean you can't. Doesn't mean it's not possible for you. Doesn't mean it won't happen for you. But it might be more of an effort and a struggle, and it might require some conscious, focused effort on your part, when it comes to building those sorts of attachments and that kind of relationship. Or maybe you just haven't been in love. Maybe you haven't, any of the women, you're only 25 fucking years old. Maybe none of the women you've been with and you've dated and you've enjoyed having sex with and enjoyed spending time with really reached you and touched you. And so the ends of those relationships didn't devastate you because you weren't that invested in them emotionally. It could be one or the other. It could also be both. But if you want to be reassured that you are not a sociopath, get thee to a shrink, go. Or if you want to find out if you are a sociopath and what that means for you going forward when it comes to relationships, forming lasting connections and feeling feelings, again, you're going to have to get thee to a shrink.
Hi, Dan. This is a 23-year-old man living on the west side of the United States, and my question I'm calling is about sex with my fiance and I. My question is about sex. When we decide, we have a lot of open conversations about sex and what we like and what we would like to try with each other. My question is, when we want to get more kinky, we want to try stuff, be a little rough, be a little tied up, and I have a problem finding the spot in the middle. I can be vanilla, I can have great casual sex when we both want to have sex with each other, and when she wants to try to get a little more kinky and step out of her comfort zone sometimes, I typically go too far for her, and I get too rough too quick, and then typically shut down the kink. And there's things that she wants to try that I don't want to have to shut down or have to have her shut down because it's gone too far too quick for her. So if there's any tips or you can teach me or tell me how to find the middle happy zone when I can gradually work up to something or anything like that.
Okay, so you say that you go too far too fast, it gets too rough too quick, and it pulls her out of it, or she has to safe word out or call a stop. Can you describe what it is that's happening at these moments?
Yeah, so typically our sex is relatively vanilla, and then there are days and times where she wants to try to do more. So she likes to be tied up and blindfolded. And then because I'm typically just more experienced with being kinky like that, I'll choke too hard. I will. I slapped her.
You choke too hard?
I grabbed her throat too hard, and it took her out of it just because it was. I grabbed her throat too hard, and I slapped her once, and she didn't on the face, and she didn't like that at all.
Are you talking about these things in advance of attempting them?
I don't think enough. She says she wants to try new stuff, and so.
Okay, it's fine. It's fine to want to try new stuff, but there are things you just don't bust out on somebody, particularly when it comes to S&M. You just don't slap somebody in the face because that can be traumatizing or triggering. There are people who a slap in the face can bring on a horrible migraine. I'm one of those people. Choking can be intense for someone, particularly if they've ever been assaulted or choked in a non-consensual manner. So these are all things that you need to have long conversations about. And I know that can seem like then it's not spontaneous, then we're not in the moment, but you've done spontaneous in the moment S&M, and as you have discovered, it doesn't fucking work, right?
Yeah.
You keep stepping on that rake. Stop stepping on that rake.
Okay.
You have to negotiate all of this in advance, find out what her limits are, and then take baby steps. If you had said, I've done this before and with somebody who enjoyed slapping, is that something you might enjoy? And she's like, well, I don't know how I'd feel about it in the moment. Then if you were going to attempt it, it would be very light slapping. You wouldn't call off and really slap somebody hard. And so the mistake you're making is applying this, I think, even in the context of vanilla sex, mistaken notion, but this common notion about vanilla sex is that it should all just kind of happen without much talking, because then it's about passion and getting carried away and it's all natural. And if you talk about it too much, then you drain it of passion and spontaneity. Spontaneity is the enemy of good experiences when you're talking about BDSM.
Okay.
You can't spontaneously hurt someone in a way that they enjoy, because you're likely to hurt someone in a way that they're not going to enjoy.
Yeah, I understand that.
So you have to start talking. And I know that can seem like then you're not the top. If you're the top, you're supposed to be taking your pleasure and doing what you want, but that's not true. The top in a BDSM play scenario is doing for the bottom. The bottom is always in charge. in BDSM play. If the bottom's not in charge, then it's assault. Or a shitty experience. The bottom's in charge. The role play comes in and the skill comes in for the top to, within the parameters, within the limits, to make it look like you're doing whatever you want, to make the bottom feel like they're helpless before your desires, when actually you're kind of tagging their bases for them. And maybe with baby steps, pushing the envelope a little bit here and there, but only if you're very skilled at reading someone's desire levels. And you can still be talking at those moments. You can still be obtaining their consent and making it clear that you're asking for their consent, not demanding it. Even if there's a dom-sub dynamic going on, you're getting their buy-in and their affirmative, enthusiastic buy-in without being manipulative. But it sounds like you're making really JV, junior varsity mistakes when it comes to S&M. You're not talking about it. You're not negotiating. You're going too far, too fast. And you've got the roles backwards. You're not in charge when you're topping her. She is.
Okay, I didn't look at it like that before.
Not about meeting your needs. It's about meeting her needs. You are performing for her when you are topping her, not the other way around.
Okay.
A book I recommend by Lee Harrington and Melina Williams, Playing Well with Others, Your Field Guide to Discovering, Exploring, and Navigating the Kink, Leather, and BDSM Communities. There's lots of great advice in that book. 2 other books I would recommend, both classics. Melina's book is more recent, but The Loving Dominant is a terrific book that you might want to pick up by John Warren. And Screw the Roses, Send Me the Thorns, The Romance and Sexual Sorcery of Sadomasochism. Another terrific book.
Okay.
Do some reading. You guys, people hear about BDSM, they watch BDSM kink porn. They, kinksters are more sort of public and then they think they can just do it. They can just go for it. And you can't just do it. You can't just go for it. You've got to think about it and be cautious and take it slow, because you can really traumatize someone. You could really hurt somebody.
Yeah. And I don't want her to assume that I'll always go too fast too. And I want her to be able to talk to me and tell me what she does like and doesn't in the future and build up to stuff like that. And
take it slow. And I think the most important point, and you said you'd never thought of it this way, when you're topping her, you're subbing for her. You're doing for her when you top her. You're performing for her to turn her on. You're playing a role, and the bottom is in charge of the limits and the parameters. The bottom sets those, and you operate within those limits and parameters, and you have some freedom within those limits and parameters, but she sets them. So you have to draw her out, and you have to listen.
All right.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Hi, Dan. Love you. Love your show. I'm calling with some feedback for the caller from episode 520, whose brother is in a bad marriage, and she was seeking your advice on how to best support him. You don't stay together for the kids. You break up for the kids. When you stay in a miserable relationship and you have children, you are modeling misery for them. Kids who grow up with miserable parents internalize that this is normal. Living in misery is not normal, and it's up to us as parents to model something healthy for our children so they can grow up and be healthy.
Hey, Dan. I have a response for the girl who was very afraid of her partner dying before her. I'm 23, and my partner died when he was 25. So it could happen to anyone at any time. Just because he's older doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to die first. You could die before him, and it's basically a terrible experience regardless. But as long as you are confident in yourself and you know what you yourself love, you're going to be okay even if your partner does die. That is something I've had to learn.
Hi, Dan. I'm calling with some feedback about episode 520 and the caller whose girlfriend likes to hear stories when they have sex. When I heard that call, I had a really sexy situation pop into my head from just a few weeks ago. A girlfriend of mine wanted to read me a really long article that we were both interested in. And as we were laying there and she was reading, I just started teasing her a little bit with kisses on her legs and her stomach and her abs. And eventually I started going down on her. It was really fun because she struggled to keep concentration, but as she would lose concentration, I would kind of tell her, hey, keep reading. I'm really interested in this. And she'd continue reading the article. And I could go down on her in a way where I could take her to the edge of not being able to actually continue reading, and then I could back off and she could continue reading. And basically we could edge her pussy together, and it was really, really hot. So maybe that caller can have his girlfriend read a story or an article or whatever she's interested in as they hook up, and they can get that same kind of pleasure.
And we're going to leave it there. 206-302-2064 is the number here at the Savage Lovecast. If you want to record a comment or a question for a future show, give us a buzz. 206-302-2064. You can subscribe to the Magnum edition of the Savage Lovecast at savagelovecast.com, where you can also find a comment thread on each and every show. So if there's something you've got to say, got to get off your chest, go to savagelovecast.com. And fans of the opening rants on the Savage Lovecast, fans of the politics stuff, might want to check out Blabbermouth. It's another podcast hosted by Stranger staffer and Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Eli Sanders. Eli and me and Rich Smith and a rotating cast of characters from The Stranger talk about politics and what went down that week. Blabbermouth, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find. Follow me on Twitter at FakeDanSavage. And speaking of Twitter, the Sugar Tits tweets, it only took me a year and some change to listen to the Lovecast from the beginning. I'm finally current. Thanks, Dan Savage. No, thank you, Sugar Tits, for being such a dedicated listener. The Savage Lovecast is produced by Nancy Hartunian, also the producer of Blabbermouth, and me and Nancy and the tech-savvy at-risk youth. We will all be back at you next week with another installment of the Savage Lovecast.